Hello and welcome to the Oral Apothecary Podcast, authentic chat about medicines, pharmacy and healthcare in the UK.
Pharmacist Jamie, Gimmo and SDC take on topical and controversial stories but keep it edgy yet light-hearted.
Pod guests share their desert island drugs and joyful patient stories.
Welcome to the Oral Apothecary Podcast. My name is Jamie Hayes. Coming up in today's episode, we're joined by Tracy Lyons. Tracy is a medicines optimisation pharmacist at University Hospitals Dorset. She is the Environment and Sustainability Advisor for the UK Clinical Pharmacy Association and also the co-founder of Pharmacy Declares. We'll welcome Tracy in a moment as she shares her desert island drug, her career anthem, and recommends a book for the Oral Apothecary Library. Our micro-discussion this episode is on healthcare's response to climate change, as we look at the 25 megatons carbon footprint of NHS England and explore the role that patients and healthcare professionals need to play in the climate emergency. Let's move straight to welcome my two fellow apothecaries. STC is in Bournemouth and Gimmo is in Cardiff. Welcome both.
Evening. James, can I just say, I've lived in Dorset for 6 years, and I don't know if it was just me, Tracy, back me up if you can, but you went Dorset. So you said she was from University Hospitals Dorset. That's a bit offensive to people from Dorset, just saying. Yeah, it's been a good couple of weeks. We'd just like to say to the listeners that we realised that our jargon monoxide levels went a little bit off the end of the scale with the excellent episode with Diane Ashery, and I think probably the nature of the beast was that there was a lot of technical stuff. So we'll try and keep our jargon monoxide levels down, I guess. And I just wanted to say congratulations to one of the oral apothecaries who this week was made a fellow of the RPS. So congratulations to them. Now, to the listener, I'm actually thinking whether or not I need to give up doing the oral apothecary because I'm now the only one that doesn't have a fellowship of the RPS. And I'm not bitter at all, but congratulations, James. I know, Paul, you were made a fellow previously, but joking apart, it's a great effort. And I know you guys have both done a lot of work for the pharmacy profession. So big up to you both and congratulations, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Jamie. Steve, you need another fellow to nominate you. So if you find someone, let us know.
Do you know what you've been up to?
Not really in keeping with the environmental theme, I'm sorry, but my eldest passed his driving test, and anyone who's got a 17-year-old lad who's sort of suddenly passed the driving test, he's been railing for a car this week, so we've been trying to sort that out, but also coming to terms with the cost of insurance. If there's anything that puts you off getting a car, it's the price of insurance for newly qualified, so that's been taking up a lot of my headspace.
Did you get a VW Corsa?
No.
It's a Vauxhall Corsa, isn't it?
Vauxhall Corsa.
I think Seat Ibiza was the one from a dodgy car yard, so that should do him. Yeah, no, I recorded another podcast this week as part of the launch of the new QI department in Cwmtaf Meganeg Health Board. That was fun. And what makes a good QI project? So I don't know if that is going to be published, but if it is, I'll share it.
Sounds spicy.
Yeah, and I've been doing some behavioural change stuff today. So have we discussed the Combi Framework on here before?
We've gone into it.
Yeah, so a recap. Combi is a framework that's used when you're looking at identifying behaviours of people that you feel you might want to influence for health reasons. And so it identifies 3 factors that need to be present for any behaviour to occur. That's capability, opportunity and motivation. So if you look at those 3 things around the behaviour that you want to change, it offers you a really good framework to change. So I'd recommend, if you are looking at behaviour change, have a look at that framework. That's Combi.
This is not a word of a lie. Today, I've been speaking to Kieran Hand, who's the lead in England for antimicrobial resistance, and we were talking all about behaviour change, and he immediately mentioned Combi and that how he was thinking about, the importance of trying to change behaviour, which, and I said to him, I know he's a big fan of the podcast, and he gets all his good ideas from us, but he did say that is something that they're thinking about using, so yeah.
Well, I've been up in Scotland for the Scottish Practice Pharmacy and Prescribing Advisors Conference. I was chairing the conference, a hybrid conference, shape of things to come, I think, about 150 people in the conference centre and 90 people online. So it was nice to get out and about and meet some of the people that have supported us on the podcast. So thanks to Jane Hall and Gail Turnbull from NHS Ayrshire and Arran. Lovely to see them and hear their support for the pod. Attended some great sessions on green prescribing and an excellent decision-making workshop. We explore expertise on the podcast, haven't we, over the 3 series, and we've talked a bit about performing under pressure. And so while we were boarding the plane on the way home on the Friday evening, there was a fire on the plane. And so I need to give a quick shout out to the flight attendant on flight EZY430 out of Edinburgh late on Friday night.
Like she's going to be listening.
Well, she will. Well, we'll let Twitter do its thing. She deserves a special mention for her outstanding reactions and calmness in a situation that could easily have escalated very quickly. And so somebody's vape battery exploded into flames and it got quite edgy, very smoky. Full fire brigade response, everybody off the plane, arrived back home 2:30 in the morning.
Well, that's why you'd rather have done it on Zoom.
Glad to have you back, Jamie. I was on a plane once going to, I think it was America. This was years ago. And it comes over the tannoy. Is there a doctor on the plane? It actually came over the tannoy. Is there a fireman on the plane? so everyone went, what? So there's a way to start panic. And I think that was a battery exploding or something like that. But yeah. Okay, it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's guest, Tracy Lyons. Tracy is medicines optimisation pharmacist at University Hospital in Dorset. She actually lives in beautiful Bournemouth, which is the home of one of the apothecaries as well, and is the UK Clinical Pharmacy Association's Environment and Sustainability Advisor. So Tracy describes herself as a lifelong environmentalist who's always been a bit of a nature nerd, but over the last few years have increasingly understood the importance of planetary health as a requirement for human health. She's a member of MedAct, which is Health Professionals for a Safer, Fairer, Better World, and Doctors for Extinction Rebellion. And in March 2021, she was part of a group of people who formed Pharmacy Declares, a self-convened group of climate-conscious pharmacy professionals calling for our professional and regulatory bodies to A, declare a climate emergency, B, fully divest from fossil fuels, and C, provide climate health education and leadership. Obviously a timely topic as well, because we had the COP conference in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago. So it's really great to have you on the podcast, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me. Excuse my froggy throat. I'm just getting over a cold, but it's so lovely to be here.
It's great to have you. So what's on your agenda? What's happening in your world at the moment?
We have had a really exciting, phenomenal time recently. So as you said, one of our objectives was to ask our professional bodies, our regulatory bodies, to divest from fossil fuels because, they're funding the climate crisis, which is a health issue, the biggest health issue we'll ever face. And on the 17th of this month, the Royal Pharmaceutical Society committed to divesting fully from fossil fuels by the end of 2022. So it was just like a cause for champagne and celebration. It's just amazing. And it's been the culmination of months and months of teamwork between the people within Pharmacy Declares and the people within RPS, and it's just brilliant because the RPS have already taken brilliant steps by declaring a climate emergency, which is something we also ask for, and this was just the sort of the final thing that tied up the loop, and it means that they provide really great climate health leadership for health teams in the country. And yeah, so we're still recovering from that. It was like Christmas came early for us. It was wonderful.
Is that why you got a heavy cold? Too much champagne?
I wish it was, I promise. Yeah, no, it was just lovely. I was at home self-isolating because we had some COVID positive tests in the family, and my husband put down his computer and we stopped the homeschool for half an hour and we had a glass of champagne. It was just amazing. I know I'm not allowed to say that, but it truly was amazing.
So there was a lot of lobbying behind the scenes because that's pretty good going really. If you started in March and it's taken you 6 months to get a result.
It's been a whirlwind of activity actually. So before we started, I'd been really ineffectively trying to enact some change on my own and getting nowhere. I wrote to people, I tried talking to people, and I just didn't have the right techniques or the right approaches, and I thought I really need some support here. And I'd been hanging out with some really fantastic medics and midwives for years, and working with the Health Declares team who were asking for similar action from other royal colleges, etc. And I just thought there has to be a pharmacy cohort of people that feel the same anxiety about climate and ecological change that I do. And so just after Valentine's Day in February this year, this message went out on Twitter. It said, is there anybody out there? Can anybody come and help me enact change within the pharmacy profession? I just kind of expected it to sort of go unanswered and it would, fizzle off into the Twitter sphere. But all of these amazing people turned up. It started off with just me in Dorset, but now there's a core team of about 60 or 70 people who really understand that climate change is a health issue. It's not just an environmental one. They get the understanding that, we're health professionals, and so this is the one thing that's going to affect us all very imminently, and if we can make change here, we can help our patients on a level that, will surpass any other action that we've taken. And so we got together and we contacted the RPS and the GPHC. To the RPS's credit, they wrote back to us, they started dialogue. Things ticked along a little bit, I guess more slowly than, we wanted, but they're a big organisation, and what I soon came to understand is that for things to happen within the RPS, that you have to go to multiple committees and you have to get agreement from many different people.
What you need is a couple of fellows, actually.
Or do you know what? I have to give full credit to the RPS, particularly the team at RPS Wales, who met with us regularly. So yes, Ellen and Karen in RPS Wales. And I know we caused them many, many headaches over the meetings, because we kept pushing and kept asking for more. And they just listened to us and took on what we were trying to say, and they helped us get it to the right people. And then, their action started with a climate emergency declaration, which, if you think about it, is like a medical diagnosis. It's naming the problem. And only once you've named the problem can people adequately respond and get on board with the treatment that's needed. So that was the first step. And then, as I say, more recently, they divested from fossil fuels, which is, it's just massive. And we've done a bit of digging up around afterwards, and we think they're possibly the first pharmacy organisation in the world to have taken this step. It's real climate health leadership from one of our eminent professional bodies in the UK. It's amazing.
Tracy, what does that actually mean to totally divest in fossil fuels then? Because I'm going to speak plainly here, and I'd never heard the terminology planet health, which I really like, because when I started prepping for this podcast, I sometimes get confused whether a bit like what are the right words to use, in relation to environmental or carbon friendly, or, we had ozone friendly. And I sometimes get confused, if I'm totally honest with you. And I quite like the idea of planet health and the fact that you've got to name the problem as a diagnosis so that you can then treat it. What does that actually mean? Because I get all this carbon offsetting as a sort of general punter in the street. I sometimes think, I'm paraphrasing now, but that's like when aeroplane companies say, oh, you can still fly with us because don't worry, it's carbon neutral because we're going to plant a load of trees. But that doesn't really feel, like that's actually the full picture. So what does that actually mean when you say that?
In terms of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, it purely meant that in their investment portfolio, which is quite sizable, they weren't going to have any direct investments in fossil fuel companies. If you want to talk about planetary health, it's a fairly new term, but I guess if you go into any new area, it's a bit like if you go into law or something, there's lots of vocabulary to learn. But planetary health is this really beautiful term. It's an understanding, it's a connection that, in order for human health to exist, you have to have planetary health. Because if you think about it, the environment gives us this suite of facilities, water, food, protection from climate change, infectious diseases, all of these things. We need to enable the environment around us to do its thing, to look after us. And I think for too long, particularly, maybe in healthcare, it's almost been seen to be non-academic or uncool to care about the environment. Whereas now, it's really crucial. That's one of our key messages, that everyone has to understand that the world we live in is essential for us to, survive and be healthy. We need it to thrive so that we can.
So, Tracy, I've been doing a session called Prescribing in the World at Large for about 10 years, probably. And I always put in the behavioural change stuff, but I also put in, do you remember the Asian vultures that were dying because of feeding on diclofenac in the carcasses? And I've always finished up with, and here's where the medicines end up. And it's in our water courses, isn't it? It's in our fresh water, in our oceans and our rivers. So I like to think I've been championing some of these concepts for a little while. And then on the RPS theme, it's a bit like bagpuss, really. I'm a board member in Wales. As a board member, I bring things back into the centre occasionally. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I went to the Medical Directors Conference in Cardiff, where they did a brilliant session on climate and inhalers and gases, and it blew me away. And there was a pharmacist, Alana Adams, one of my colleagues from Cardiff, that was presenting that day as well, but the junior doctors presenting their work on anaesthetic gases, and I brought that back into RPS as a little, this is interesting.
Oh, so maybe you seeded the ideas on that.
I hope so. I hope so. A nudge for all the work that Karen and Ellen then have gone on to do.
So we're saying all the credit goes to you, Jamie, not.
Well, I'm not a fellow for nothing.
I think what the activism that you've been involved with in the last few years, Tracy's done, which I think has been really successful, because I think there's a lot of work that's gone on before this. It hasn't just started in March 2021. I think you've been really successful in framing climate change as a public health issue, and I think that's been one of the big turning points recently, because you've got people that the public are more likely to listen to, i.e. healthcare professionals and doctors and pharmacists and stuff, rather than politicians, to talk about it. For me, that feels like a really important turning point in the last couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. I've been following climate change for decades now, and I